The hearing room went silent. Represser Jasmine Crockett stood calmly at the podium, her bright red suit popping against the wood walls. For almost 20 minutes, Stephen Miller, the former presidential advisor, had kept interrupting her, cutting her off with rude remarks and stopping her from showing her evidence. But this time was different. As Miller started his 12th interruption, Crockett reached into her binder and pulled out a paper no one expected. She looked right at him, her voice steady and clear. "Mr. Miller, I've let you interrupt me 11 times today. That's enough," she continued. "This paper proves everything you've been denying. You signed it 3 weeks before you claimed to know nothing about the policy." Miller's face went white. He opened his mouth, then closed it without saying a word. The committee chair leaned forward, reaching for the paper as photographers snapped pictures. Instantly, the power dynamic of the session completely changed. What happened next didn't just shut Stephen Miller up. It exposed something that would be talked about in DC for a while. Before we talk about this crazy story, tell us where you're watching from and subscribe so you don't miss our next breakdown of a big political fight. To really get how big this clash was, we need to go back and see who these two political players are and how they got to this explosive moment. Jasmine Crockett wasn't just some lawmaker. Back in Dallas, Texas, she used to be a human rights lawyer. She spent her career defending people who couldn't defend themselves and fighting unfair systems. She went to Rhodes College and Houston University Law School, so she brought both brains and real-world experience to her work in the legislature. People liked her because she was direct and always knew her stuff. She earned respect from both sides because she had something worthwhile to say in debates about laws. "Rep. Crockett does her homework," said one longtime committee staffer who'd worked with her. "She doesn't make stuff up, and she's always ready for a fight." Stephen Miller, on the flip side, became famous as one of the most talked-about people in Washington. He was a top advisor in the last administration and came up with a lot of the tough border security policies. He was known for his combative TV appearances and taking a hard line on divisive issues. After leaving the White House, he remained an influential guy with conservative groups. The meeting that brought Crockett and Miller together was about a rule that everyone was arguing about. Miller kept saying he didn't have a hand in creating it, even though there were news stories that suggested he did. He went on TV a bunch of times, strongly denying any involvement, saying, "I had no direct knowledge of how this rule was implemented. Anyone who says different is just trying to score political points." What made this meeting different was how Crockett approached it. Other people tried to trap Miller with assumptions or get into arguments about ethics, but Crockett spent months gathering information, tracking down documents, and getting stories from former staffers. Her team found a key memo. It showed Miller supported the rule and had notes in his handwriting from weeks before he claimed he knew nothing about it. This wasn't just evidence against him. It suggested he lied under oath. Miller seemed confident, even arrogant, at the start of the session. Dressed in a navy suit and red tie, he had the same self-assuredness he always projected. As soon as Crockett started questioning him, he used a familiar tactic: interruption. "Legislator, that's wrong," he snapped before Crockett could finish her first question. "Mr. Miller, please, let me continue," Crockett replied. "What you're saying is completely false," Miller interrupted again, talking over her. He did this 9 more times, clearly trying to throw her off balance and stop her from building a case. The committee leader intervened twice, asking Miller to let Crockett finish her questions, but he kept interrupting. Miller didn't realize Crockett had expected this. The hearing room was tense as Crockett began her official questioning. Cameras focused on the packed audience of reporters with notebooks. The clock showed 2:15 p.m. Her 15 minutes had started. "Mr. Miller," Crockett began, her voice calm and steady, "I want to ask about your role in creating the border detention rule that was put in place in June 2022. Before she could start, Miller leaned into the mic. "I've dealt with this stuff before, and I've been clear about my position." Crockett, ignoring his interruption, went on. "I have some questions about the timeline. On March 15, 2022, were you at the National Protection Strategy meeting when this rule was first talked about?" Miller shifted in his seat. "That's not right at all. It's a yes or no question, Mr. Miller," Crockett pressed, trying to take charge. "You're twisting things," Miller shot back, talking over her again. "These rules were made the right way, with proper oversight. This kept happening." Crockett tried to get the basic facts out, but every time she got close to something important, Miller cut her off, often with long explanations that wasted her time. By the fifth interruption, people in the audience started whispering. "Mr. Miller," Crockett tried again. "The committee has emails showing you got daily updates on how the rule was being used. This goes against what you said on TV, that you didn't know anything about how it was being carried out. Can you explain why these don't match up?" Miller's face got harder, and he interrupted for the sixth time. "Those emails were on mass distribution lists that went to a lot of officials. Just getting an email doesn't mean—" "So, you admit you got those emails?" Crockett broke in, trying to get a straight answer. "What I'm saying," Miller said, raising his voice a little, "is that you're trying to mislead people. These were just regular info updates that Mr. Miller, the committee chair, cut in. Please let the Congresswoman finish her questions before you answer." Five nodded a little, but once Crockett kept talking, he went right back to doing the same thing. By the ninth interruption, you could see some of the panel members getting annoyed. One liberal on the panel shook his head while taking notes. Even a conservative politician was seen whispering to an aide, looking concerned. Crockett, still calm, switched gears as she approached the middle of her questioning time. "Mr. Miller, I'd like to turn your attention to your sworn statement from April 18th of this year." She held up a document. "In it, you said under oath that you first knew about the application details on July 1st, 2022, at the earliest. Is that right?" Miller leaned forward. "Yes, that's right. It matches what I said. And you stand by that statement today, under oath?" Crockett asked. "I do," Miller said firmly. "No matter what anyone tries to suggest, I've been totally consistent and honest about my small role in this." That was interruption number 10, and for the first time, Crockett let it go on, watching Miller as he talked at length about his minor part and limited knowledge. As he spoke, she quietly opened a blue binder on the desk in front of her. "Mr. Miller," she said when he finally stopped, "would you call being at a rule application strategy meeting knowing about application details?" Miller's eyes flashed with a bit of uncertainty. "That would totally depend on what kind of meeting it was and what stuff was talked about. A simple yes or no will do," Crockett pressed. "It's not a simple question," Miller replied. Interruption number 11. "You're trying to make a false story by oversimplifying complicated management stuff. The rules involved a lot of people from different groups. Getting old info isn't the same as—" Well, as Miller went on, Crockett caught the panel leader's eye, and he gave a tiny nod. Then she reached into her binder and pulled out a single sheet of paper. "Mr. Miller," she said, her voice cutting through his explanation, "I've let you interrupt me 11 times today. That's it." The room went silent as she held up the record. "This is the sign-in sheet and notes from the application strategy meeting on June 15th, 2022. That's 2 weeks before you said you knew anything about the application details. Your signature's on the first page, proving you were there. Your handwritten notes are in the margins of pages 3 and 4, mainly about application methods." She passed copies to the panel leader and senior member, then kept going. "Plus, your online calendar, which this panel got through legal means, shows you set up 3 more meetings with application team leaders the next week." Miller's face went blank. His energy from before it was gone. "So, Mr. Miller, here's a simple question. Did you give false info in your sworn statement when you said you didn't know about application details before July 1st? Or are you lying now?" The crowd started to whisper. A reporter in the front row started typing fast on his device. The panel leader asked for quiet as lights shone in the room. For a few moments, Stephen Miller stood still, as the panel looked at the record that didn't match what he swore was true. 7. When he finally spoke, his voice lost its earlier confidence. "Senator, I need to check this document thoroughly," he said. Crockett cut in, taking charge. "Mr. Miller, is this your signature, correct?" She walked to the witness table and put the original document in front of him, pointing to the bottom of the first page. Miller looked down, then up. The camera zoomed in as he took a breath. "Yes, it looks like my signature," he said, "but there's context missing." Crockett turned to the third page. "Are these your handwritten notes in the margin, discussing specific ways to apply the rule?" The audience watched as Miller looked at the page, his earlier quick answers replaced by nervous silence. A conservative senator leaned over to look at the document, raising his eyebrows as he read it. "I'd have to check my records to be sure," Miller started. Crockett said, her voice calm but firm. Mr. Miller, you've been a public official for years. You know your own handwriting, right? The silence that followed spoke volumes. After a few moments, Miller admitted, "Yes, that looks like my handwriting." A ripple of whispers went through the room. A political reporter from a big newspaper would later call this the moment the wall broke down. The committee head, sensing the importance of the moment, gave Crockett 5 more minutes for questioning. Crockett continued, "Mr. Miller, these notes discuss how to apply the exact rule that you claim you knew nothing about until later. They include your ideas about who should be on staff, how to handle things, and location assignments. This isn't just passively collecting data. It's actively feeding info into how the rule gets used." Miller shifted in his seat, trying to recover. "Making rules is a team thing, and it happens bit by bit," he said. "First, there are talks, then the rule gets used. They're separate." Crockett cut in. "But you didn't mention any steps or early chats. You swore you knew nothing about how the rule would be used before July 1st. Yet, we have records of you discussing the specifics of how it would be used back on June 15th. That's not a misunderstanding, it's a straight-up contradiction." Now, everyone was glued to the documents. One lawmaker passed a note to their leader, who nodded seriously. "Want to change your story?" Crockett asked, giving Miller a way out. Miller glanced at his lawyer, who fidgeted behind him. When Miller spoke again, he sounded different. "I might have gotten the dates mixed up. There are tons of meetings when you work in politics, and gotten mixed up is a weird way to describe a contradiction that's written in your own handwriting," Crockett said. "Let's be clear about what just happened. You've said over and over that you had no clue how this rule would be used. You swore to that. But now, when we smack you with proof that says the opposite, in your own writing, you're saying you simply misremembered?" The room erupted, and reporters scrambled to file updates. The panel leader kept yelling for quiet. Miller's lawyer leaned in, whispering urgently to his client. Online, stuff was blowing up. Clips of the meeting were shared super fast. People all over started talking about Crockett's evidence and how Miller messed up his story. One legal expert posted that Crockett's takedown of Miller was the best questioning he'd seen in a decade, saying it wasn't just for show, but seriously good. Even conservatives noticed something big happened. One conservative reporter said that Miller walked right into Crockett's trap. She came with facts, and they were bad for him. During the session, Miller totally changed. The loud, annoying guy from before was gone. Now he was quiet, listening carefully, and always checking with his lawyer before giving short, careful answers. Crockett stayed cool and kept pointing out all the ways Miller's public statements didn't match the evidence her team had. When her time was up, the panel leader said they'd send the case to the Justice Department to see if Miller broke the law by lying under oath. Miller left with his lawyers, dodging questions from reporters. Crockett stayed behind, organizing her papers just as carefully as she did during the meeting. A coworker asked how she prepped for the showdown. Her answer blew up the next day. "I just let the facts speak for themselves. Records don't lie." The fallout from the Crockett-Miller spat went way beyond that hearing room. Soon, clips were all over the place. TV shows dissected it, with legal experts chiming in on what it meant to have someone giving a different story under oath. For Jasmine Crockett, things changed fast. Before, she was known mostly in political circles. Now she was getting props for something bigger than just party politics, being super prepared and holding people accountable. The morning after, she was on every news show, always pointing back to the core issues. "This isn't about a viral moment," she said on one show. "It's about making sure public officials are as honest as we expect every American to be." Her approach won fans from unexpected places. A former federal prosecutor who worked for Republican administrations even wrote an op-ed praising how she questioned Miller. "Crockett showed what good oversight looks like," he wrote. "She didn't use fancy words or fake anger. She built her case piece by piece and let Miller face the facts." Lots of seasoned lawmakers, even some who disagreed with Crockett on policy, quietly admitted how well she did. She did her homework. One top Republican on the committee told reporters off the record, "You can hate her views, but you can't deny she was ready." For Stephen Miller, the results were just as big, but not in a good way. The DOJ started looking into things, and groups he was tied to started distancing themselves. He used to be all over the media, but suddenly he was rare and carefully managed. When he finally talked about the hearing 2 weeks later, his explanation just made things worse. "Context matters in these situations," he said. Records can be misleading if you only look at parts of them. People trashed this answer as dodging the fact that his own handwritten notes went against what he swore was true. Maybe even worse for Miller was how the whole thing changed how people saw him. He was known for being aggressive and controlling in debates. Now he was seen as someone who got totally outsmarted when faced with facts. What made this so special was how it revealed that being ready and having proof can beat even the savviest political pros, said a respected poli-sci professor at a top school. Miller's distraction tricks, which worked for him before, were the very things that backfired when Crockett turned them against him to make her points. The showdown also kicked off bigger talks about oversight and accountability. News outlets used clips of it to show what good questioning looks like. Law professors used it to teach about how important documented evidence is when someone's telling a different story. Committees started focusing more on getting records before big hearings. Staffers specifically mentioned Crockett's way of building cases with documents instead of just arguing. For the policy itself, which was the point of the hearing, the effect was also major. With Miller's honesty in question, his previous defenses of how the policy was made fell apart. Soon after, a bipartisan group suggested big changes to fix what they now said were serious flaws in how the policy was created and put in place. Even as the public moved on, what stuck was a lesson in research and accountability that went beyond the people involved. Crockett didn't just win a round against Miller. She set a standard for how oversight should work in a healthy government. When asked later about the long-term impact of that day, Crockett said something that resonated across party lines. In government, truth isn't partisan. Facts aren't Republican or Democrat. Accountability helps everyone, no matter who's in power. The political world keeps changing, but some moments stand out as game changers that show bigger truths about our system. The day Jasmine Crockett systematically dismantled Stephen Miller's story was more than just good politics. It was a reminder that in a working government, proof still matters, being prepared still pays off, and accountability is still possible, even in divided times. For folks watching at home, it offered something rare these days. The satisfying sight of truth cutting through the BS, documented facts beating constant denials, and thorough preparation overcoming blatant stonewalling. Where were you when you saw this?